Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Rocket Monday, we're going to talk about small satellite launchers. So let's dive right into it. Now first you have to understand this is a new market at this point in time. For example, like in early 2000s, software was the next big thing. Right now AI is the next big thing. Same way, space has become the next big thing. Every Tom, Dick and Harry is pouring their money into it. And why is that? Well, simply put, before recently, basically, you had only two options: military or governments. That's it. Nobody else can touch space, but that has changed specifically with inspiration 4 mission, because at this point in time it is proven, like it's not something, oh, it could be done. No, it's something that has been done, that commercial market has reached it. Basically low earth orbit commercial rockets are like, I got this, fam, don't worry about it. That is very critical, and that's directly translates to private funds, and capability is rising, meaning the amount of private funds going into space industry that has went from, let's say, few million to few billion. And the amount of capacity, SpaceX is like, leading in that, but he's not alone. So that's another benefit. Is like there are more and more companies coming up that are completely built from scratch, civilian commercial aerospace companies that are actually able to do things, rather than like, hey, just we're gonna be like, private fund, and then we're gonna talk to NASA for ULA and contracts and all that. No, we will do everything ourselves. That is a very big step it has done. On top of that, to facilitate that, electronics are becoming smaller. Now be very mindful, you can launch a satellite that has like, latest 5 nanometer processor, but it will not work in space. Now let me be very clear, it will work. It's just like you will have way too many errors in that. So generally you do not want to use as small as possible. However, if you are making hundreds of them, you can take a risk. It's like, just by sheer probability some of them will work. So if you are launching, let's say for example, in case of India has a record, past record of 100 plus satellites, and each of them are, Cubesats, they could use processors that are not space hardened, so they can be cheaper and far more easily deployable. And even if like, let's say 50% of them failed, which would still give you 50 satellite, which NASA would have killed for back in the days. So fundamentally electronics are getting smaller and far more capable. Even with space radiation, we just realized that if we have to make code far more redundant. Basically code has to double check, triple check itself, and if you have 2-3 processors, even basically non-space hardened processors, they will work. So electronics are getting smaller. So that's why like even NASA is using CubeSat systems for Mars kind of missions. Basically they sent this, there were 2 of these directly after, basically they were tailgating with Curiosity system. So at this point in time, a CubeSat can do amazing things. Big cube satellites, they can do mind-boggling things. Even small ones can do amazing things. So flat out, CubeSats have reached a point where they are time tested, meaning CubeSats are no longer it's a college thing, time testing. No, like people have made satellites, those satellites that take photograph of the earth and sell it to let's say Google or some other Bing and things of that nature. There are other companies who are building space telescope in CubeSat format and selling the data to other researchers. So reality is there is money to be made, basically moolah. So the more amount of money is involved into this, the more people will put into this. So CubeSat is tested, private funds have reached it. Reality is that we can do this now. So it's the next hottest thing at this point in time. So let's talk about the second most successful private space company, Rocket Lab. Well, Rocket Lab is basically, you have to understand, SpaceX is still private, meaning yes, it does have investors including Google and all that. It's not open to public market. However, Rocket Lab is open to public market, and the primary reason for that is like they have achieved 18 successful orbital launch. Now 18 does not sound too huge, but that number in the time frame they have achieved it is comparable to almost all government agency. So be mindful, like it may sound, oh, it's a small rocket, oh, they have only done 18 times. The speed by which they did, like, okay, we are a company, we are building on a rocket, we have built a rocket, we have tested the rocket, we have launched the rocket, and we are now actually launching paid customer with this. It's mind-bogglingly fast. Like, to give you a context, in the same amount of time ISRO built one rocket engine. So it's ludicrously fast how fast they went from we have an idea to we are actually changing the world. So that's amazing aspect of that. And because they have realized that SpaceX has done something very interesting recently that will directly cannibalize its sale, so they have tried to reduce the cost. Now this puppy is way too small to have proper reusable gear. However, thankfully it's very small, meaning a small parachute can handle this puppy. So they have actually tried to use parachutes and actually have captured it, meaning they had 2 missions as far as I know. When I last checked, it's like they had 2 missions, where the first mission was like, just deploy the parachute, see does this puppy survive or not, and then it lands in the sea, they have captured it and figured it out like, yes, our system works. This is the second one that I'm showing you the photo. There is like, system entered, helicopter captured it. Like, it's a actually tested thing. I'm pretty sure by the midpoint of 2022, they should have at least 2 or 3 recovery missions where they have done the recovery properly, and they will be reusing. So that should reduce their price drastically. And they know for a fact that small rockets are really bad for business. Like, yes, it allows you to, quote unquote, get your foot in the door, but it's really bad. It's like, if from business point of view, it's as bad as can be. So they are literally moving up from electron, or in case of atoms, it's going inside the atom. They are building neutron. Now this puppy will be bigger rocket, basically 1/3 of Falcon 9, and that puppy will be completely reusable from day one. So let's talk about the second contender, that is Astra. Now Astra came very close to orbit, meaning they have actually launched the rocket. The rocket went to orbit. It ignited the third stage. Everything worked. Only problem was the delta V was a bit too small, and meaning as in like they were little bit behind. Basically in 28,000 km/h they needed to achieve. They failed to achieve all, like little bit. They were just little bit. So this was very annoying, and people thought, okay, that was second mission. Third mission they will say, but third mission took a bit of inspiration from Tokyo Drift and started drifting. Basically they had an engine failure and it started to drift. Now when I watched this, I was reminded of like very old rocket test footage from the early V2 era rocket system, where it was a common thing to happen. Like, this was not a new thing, this was like a common thing. They launched the rocket was like, I'm too heavy, I'm too heavy, I'm too heavy, I'm too heavy. Okay, I've burnt enough. I'm slowly starting, okay, I've burnt now enough, now it starts to go. So this was kind of common. It's a surprisingly first time we are seeing this in modern history. Like in black and white footage, if you try to look for it, you will find many that has that. So now they are in public stock, so meaning the private investors were like, drying out, because you tried many times and you went boom every time. So people are like, we need a bit more. So stocks were opened, publicly traded, but they have to reach. Basically, next mission has to be successful, because they have failed enough time that people might start to question, is like, dude, well, can you actually do this? Or like, you'll have, oh, this failed or that failed. Because I get it, space is hard, but it's no longer the early days of like, SpaceX Falcon 1. You are competing against a much more mature player. Like Electron Lab have actually done it. So it's like, what do you bring to the table that is very unique to you, other than going boom? So you have to understand, Astra has to succeed very quickly, like maybe 1 or 2 launches before their stock value starts to go down. So that's a serious thing. Then we come to another new contender, that is Firefly. Now Firefly, I have to say, for a small company that is open to public, they have amazing PR. Now you have to understand that even a rocket company has smaller YouTube channel than I do. Not this English channel, my Hindi channel is 100k. So you get the point. Like, if you are a small rocket company and you are open for stock market, your stock value is directly proportional to the actually perceived value. For example, people perceive Apple to be superior than Samsung, so it has $2 trillion value. However, Samsung has much more real capacity, which includes building military equipments and LNG carriers and giant shipping containers. Basically, in terms of capability, it does not matter. It's like, do you have the perception? So perception is very important if you want to deal with stock market. Now this company, even though it's a starting new company, they did a very clever move. It's like they went to Tim Dot, everyday astronaut, and it's like, will you be so kind to do a live stream? He was very happy. It's like, it's a win-win scenario. I get to cover exclusively new launch system, and this puppy, basically this company gets completely good coverage. Now you may be like, isn't that bad? Their rocket blew up. Again, nobody was expecting it to work. It's like, this was the first try. It would have been a miracle if it had actually worked. It's like, first try, anybody's like, we launched the rocket, it actually went there. It's like, that never happens. That's like, nope, lol, that never happens. So reality is, as a starter company, they did an amazing PR move, and because they were showing everything, it gave people interest into that. And Tim Dot has a much larger challenge than what basically Firefly team has. So meaning, a lot more people are aware of this company, meaning perception value is higher, meaning the people looking into investing in the system, they will do a basic Google search or Twitter search to see how often that name is used. It will be high because of the PR move. So it's kind of amazing. And they are also building bit bigger rockets, so they do not need to instantly go into, hey, let's build a bigger rocket. It can do up to 1 ton to low Earth orbit, almost twice as every other competitor. So it's good. It has like enough breathing room where it will not be obsolete very quickly. And they had that one engine failure which caused the malfunction, and that they had to be terminated. Now be mindful, this is a good system, is that the rocket did not disintegrate on its own. They had to turn it off, meaning rocket remained in control even after one engine failure. And it has only 4 engines, so basically thrust loss was quite significant. And because these engines do not have 2-axis gimbal, like basically 2-axis gimbal would be like this, 1-axis gimbal is like this, two axis would be like this. So then if you want to do this, you need two axis gimbal. They have only one axis. Now you're like, how the heck it's doing? Well, there are four arranged in system. So basically top one can do this, left one can do this, bottom one can do this, right one can do this. So they can achieve proper control. And that's why I'm like kind of amazed, given the fact that they had one lost, they still managed to control the rocket. That is quite amazing software. So they have very good hopes at this point in time. So people are hopeful, and because of their PR move, I'm pretty sure far more people are rooting for them, which is attract much more attention, which will attract far more financing. So let's see what they can do. So what we can expect in the future? Well, reality is a lot of players are entering the market, including many Indian companies also. But you have to understand that the market will only accept few players. For example, in India, in the early days of like only a few years ago, basically 4 or 5 years ago, we used to have many mobile companies, many like 10, 12 mobile companies. However, market chewed them out, most of them. At this point in time, there are like only 2 or 3 surviving companies. So that happens with almost everything. Like in the early days of internet era, hundreds of search engine came, but only 2-3 survived. So that's the reality of it. It happens almost with everything. It's like there will be inrush of demand, then hundreds of companies will create a oversupply, and then only few will survive. That is a common thing that happens all the time. So it will happen with space industry also. And right now I'm noticing something weird. It's like every company is saying we're gonna be the cheapest. They can't. They flat out can't. A starting company cannot beat SpaceX. That's not gonna happen. Not even basically Electron, because everybody is quoting things to Electron. Is like, dude, we are actually delivering. There is a thing known as insurance. We have very low value because we have actually successfully completed SpaceX life. We have the lowest, and even if we don't, because of their satellite bus architecture, meaning ride sharing, they can get your satellite to space for less than 100K. Let that sink in. They are achieving that kind of price, meaning you can have a satellite from building to actually deploying in space in less than $500,000. That's mind-bogglingly cheap. That's like free. That's the amount of money is like colleges invest in, like air conditioner upgrades. So be mindful. That is mind-boggling in terms of like cost. Basically, that will make Electron look at least 7 to 8 times more expensive. So yes, this is a bus service. Yes, this is a Uber ride, but for a fact that Uber is not that much expensive, and that's why Electron company is working so hard to make it recoverable. So in principle, if done correctly, if they can recover the basically first stage, they should able to reduce their price by 50% bare minimum. You may be like, hey, isn't like first stage has the most expensive parts? Yes and no, because you still have to pay the range safety, you still have to pay all the safety system and all that, all the fuel and all that. So fundamentally price will not come down to 38 only 30% of the original. It will come down to 50% if they're lucky. So they have to do this. Otherwise, like right now the bus versus Uber is too damn expensive, and people will be like, yeah, you have to wait for your ride sharing, wait for orbit to line up and all that. Just people will wait. People will wait if your price difference is that high. It's like, would you wait for this mobile phone that is amazing and you can buy it, versus will you sell your kidney for this mobile phone? People don't like to sell their kidneys. So that's the reality of it. They have to do this. On top of that, cost is, I don't think, is a very good selling point. However, launch frequency is, meaning launch cadence, basically how quickly you are launching. That is another big thing. If you are a company that is like creating amazing rockets that is super cheap, use and throw, don't even think about it, super cheap, but it's like every time somebody comes to you, it's like, no, we have already booked it, next launch is like 4 months from now. While 4 months from now is super fast in rocket industry in the old days, now it's not acceptable. So launch cadence has to be improved drastically. You must achieve almost like let's say 1 launch per month. And if you really want to compete and beat other people, you have to achieve around 2 launches per month, bare minimum. So that is the next USP, because cost wise you are already beat. No new company will be able to beat Electron, because Electron already has lower insurance rate. Another aspect is, every company that is trying to do into a small satellite, they cannot stay there. That's an unsustainable business model. So they cannot be like, oh, I built a small system, now I can rest. No, they can't do it. SpaceX can do that with Falcon 9. They do not actually need to build basically Starship and remove the Mars mission. They only are building Starship so they can launch their Starlink constellation system. But if you want to launch 40,000 satellite, Falcon 9 is not gonna cut it. So that is one thing. But remove that, Falcon 9 is like pinnacle. It's like, we got this, we don't need bigger than this. But these rockets are way too small. So every company that is like serious about this, they are building bigger rocket. They have to. Even a relativity space, they're like, we're gonna 3D print rocket. It's gonna be so cheap, it's gonna be use and throw. They also know this for a fact. It's like, yeah, we're gonna build this and we're gonna work on building a bigger one right after that. We haven't even launched this. We are already working on building Falcon 9 replacement. So that's the reality of it. Because cost, SpaceX has already beat them. It's like, yeah, your system is like, let's say only $7 million and you can launch whenever I want. 1/10 of that cost. And if you share rideshare within rideshare, which can be done with SpaceX, it's like free. It's like, dude, I get it. I have to wait, let's say, rather than like you gonna launch in next month, we gonna launch in 3 months. 3 months is enough for me to make more satellites. So I do think future is going to be very brutal for many of these companies, where like only few will survive, and they have to go big, and they have to improve their launch frequency, because SpaceX have already covered all of that. So let's see what happens in the future. So this was my presentation on small satellite launch systems. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment, because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.